So today I want to talk about my experience with InsideTracker, which, if you haven't heard of them, InsideTracker offers a detailed analysis of blood and DNA biomarkers and not only makes each of them easy to understand, but also provides personalized recommendations to help you optimize each biomarker. Now, I went ahead and took two of their ultimate plans, which test up to 47 blood biomarkers, including cholesterol, glucose, magnesium, cortisol, vitamin D, and many more. And I took these two tests about 5 months apart so I could try and make some changes and see if I could improve my numbers. I also tested out the InnerAge 2.0 assessment, which calculates your biological age based on your biomarkers with a full breakdown and more personalized suggestions. And I also took the InsideTracker DNA analysis that analyzes your DNA and shows you which health markers you're genetically more or less at risk of. So I feel like after all of these tests, I have a pretty good idea about how InsideTracker works and what tests are or are not worth it. And if you're a fan of fitness tech and appreciate unbiased reviews that get right to the point without wasting your time, make sure to like this video or even subscribe to Connect the Watts for more videos just like this. So first up, let's talk about the process of taking the blood and DNA tests. So after ordering a blood test through InsideTracker, they'll send you a link to schedule an appointment for a blood draw at your local Quest Diagnostics location. I live in a moderately sized city, so there were well over 5 locations very close to me, and I was able to schedule as soon as the next day. Though you do need a little prep because the blood draw does need to happen after you've been fasting for at least 12 hours. So I tried to make the appointment in the morning. So very simple and easy process. I showed up to the Quest place, showed them my InsideTracker lab slip, and the entire process took around 5 to 10 minutes, with the results coming back within about a week. The DNA test was also fairly simple. They sent out a package in the mail, and that package contained everything for a cheek swab, including a return package. So very quick and easy, and the results for that one, I believe, came in around 2 weeks. Now, when it comes to the ultimate plan, that is the blood analysis where they look at up to 47 blood biomarkers. And I want to talk less about my specific numbers, but more just about how it was presented, because I feel that is the big benefit of InsideTracker, is that they make these blood biomarkers make sense and give personalized recommendations for each one. So overall, they broke down the biomarkers here into 17 areas. These include what InsideTracker calls the inflammation group, lipid group, vitamin D, liver enzymes group, testosterone group, creatine kinase, sugar group, iron group, cortisol, vitamin B12, sodium, potassium, magnesium group, calcium, folate, platelet group, and testosterone to cortisol ratio. Now, some of these, like the vitamin B12, for example, just have one biomarker, but other ones that say groups have more. For example, the sugar group has both glucose and hemoglobin A1C markers. And if you haven't heard of hemoglobin A1C and don't know why it would be important to track, that is what InsideTracker does so well here. So you can see here it says hemoglobin H1C or HbA1c represents the average amount of glucose in your blood for the past 90 to 120 days. If it is not used right away, glucose can bind to the hemoglobin inside your red blood cells, unlike your fasting blood glucose level, which is a measure of your glucose at the time it was drawn. HbA1c provides a measurement of your glucose levels over the period of several months. Optimized HbA1c is associated with optimal glucose levels and increased longevity. And there's even a video which covers it in even more detail here. And as you can see, the graph they provide here has your numbers plotted. So both my first and second test on a graph representing ranges that go from high to borderline high to normal, which is where this little area is here. And below that is your optimized zone, and below that is low. Now, the optimized zone here is a bit different than you would typically see from a general doctor. Doctors really just look for a normal range, and sometimes even borderline high is considered normal by doctors. But here they further show the difference between good and an optimized zone, which is really where you want to be. And sometimes, like in this case, the optimal range is only slightly smaller than good. But in some of the other biomarkers, ferritin, for example, is one of the 11 biomarkers in the iron group, has a much smaller optimal zone compared to a general good zone that, again, you probably wouldn't know about unless your doctor is just really, really good and on point. And my doctors are terrible, so I am very happy to get this more personalized range and understanding of all this, and I have found that to be extremely enlightening and very helpful. Now, so far I have shown you metrics of mine that I was able to get into an optimal range. So for example, here I was able to make some small adjustments recommended by InsideTracker to dial in my entire iron group from needs work to good. Now let's look at a group that definitely needs some work, and that would be my vitamin D levels. Okay, so numbers here are quite bad, and you can see that there are a number of recommendations made by InsideTracker, including some foods to add, and also below they suggest increasing dairy intake to 2 servings a day. That's an option, though I wasn't super interested in. So there are others, like spending 20 minutes in the direct sunlight every day, taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, and adding in more fish to my diet. And you can click to show more to see a lot more info behind each of these recommendations, including references to studies supporting them and additional reading via their blog. Now, I had really focused on spending more time directly in the sun each day going for walks, but obviously that did not really improve my numbers at all. So it looks like for me personally, I'll need to spend even more time in the sun than my 30-minute walks at lunch, and likely I'll have to supplement with vitamin D, which I have done, but not consistently. So definitely glad I took that second test to see all of this, and now that is something I will be more hyper-focused on. Now, InsideTracker also has this little how do you compare graph, so you can see the breakdown by percentages of everybody who has taken this test with InsideTracker. And so here I can see there are about 31% of people like me with low vitamin D levels. And on the app, you can create and have an entire action plan created for you, which I want to talk about more, but I think it will make more sense to talk about after we talk about some of the other InsideTracker tests, like InnerAge 2.0, which is an additional add-on and takes the data from your blood work to give you an estimated biological age. So you can really see here how old you are actually based on your health compared to your chronological age. So you can see that while my chronological age is 35, my biological age is 2.4 years lower at 32.7, which, hey, at least it's lower and that makes me happy. But obviously I want to see how this is all broken down and to see if I can improve it, right? So if I click on the breakdown, it'll show me all of the 16 factors that InnerAge is using to estimate my biological age. And here I can see how much each biomarker is affecting my results for better and for worse. And look, I think this is very useful, but realistically, if you're getting that ultimate plan, I'm not sure if this is significantly worth it since you get so much more info on just the blood work that this feels a little unnecessary. Though if you do just want a more simple, lower price blood test, the InnerAge 2.0 test on its own could be a really good option instead of going for that ultimate plan. Okay, so now let's talk about the DNA results. So the DNA analysis gives you a really interesting look at which genetic factors may be affecting your health or your biomarkers. So for example, I could see I have an elevated risk for having higher cholesterol, which has definitely been shown through the blood work and just further emphasizes to me that is something I need to focus on. Also interesting to me is that it shows that genetically, I am at a reduced risk of having bad sleep quality, which is definitely true. Like I sleep pretty well and almost never have any trouble sleeping no matter what. It also says I have an elevated potential for higher caffeine consumption, which I can also confirm is absolutely true. I can have a ton of caffeine and it doesn't seem to affect me that much. As I mentioned before, my vitamin D levels need a lot of improvement, and I can see here that genetics also come to play as a factor to why it's a bit of a struggle for me. Now, the only thing here that sort of threw me for a curveball is that the DNA points to me having an endurance dominant potential for my athlete type, which just makes me extremely curious because in reality, I could not be more of the opposite. I am way more of an explosive athlete. I was a 100-meter sprinter in track. I competed in Olympic lifting, and when I competed in CrossFit, I had to purposely not strength train the majority of the year because I would gain strength so easily, and I struggle quite a bit when it comes to building an endurance. So really, I'm not quite sure about that part of the results, but regardless, the DNA test is super interesting. I don't think it's anywhere near as valuable as that ultimate blood test, but if you're curious about how your genetics maybe influence your health, I definitely suggest looking into it. Okay, so getting back to the InsideTracker app, after you get your blood work back, you can then have the app create a personalized action plan for you. You can select which factors you want to improve the most, and you can select if you want to focus on just changing one behavior at a time, or if you want to try and change multiple behaviors, which is really awesome because I think while some of us can be successful changing multiple behaviors at once, most of us do a lot better focusing on just one thing. So I love that they give that as an option here. And then once your action plan is generated, you can look through it, adjust it, turn on or off any other actions you'd like to take part of, and you can see how impactful a change they are likely to make for you, given your personal blood results and any relevant DNA factors that tie into them and so forth. And you can set reminders or just track it daily and weekly yourself to see how you're doing, and then of course have all of that data to look back on when you retest your blood markers in the future. And this allows you to better evaluate if what you did worked or if you need to refocus on some other things. So a really cool system and just a great integration here between behavior tracking and blood work that I don't think I've seen done anywhere else. Now, the only downside of InsideTracker is really the cost, because the best test by far, the ultimate plan, does cost a pretty decent amount, though the cost can be lowered by ordering more than one test at a time. And you can, thanks to InsideTracker, get 20% off by using the discount code I have in the video description below. That said, if there is a better option, I certainly don't know of one. And given the value of this information, I think it is well worth the cost for those who can afford it. The InnerAge 2.0 and the DNA tests, I'm not quite sure are worth it. Again, I found them very interesting, but just not as personally valuable as that ultimate plan. Now, as always, appreciate you being here for this review. If you want to check out another review, I suggest watching this video right here on the cold plunge. This is Colin Jenkins with Connect the Watts, and I'll see you next time.